Combot Collective is back here once again for another event breakdown, and finally, a little overdue here, it's time to jump into our year's coverage for the European heavyweight scene, and it is a big year all the way over in Robots Live. We have the MechMania event, we have Mech Plus, a lot of big partnerships, a lot of big news coming over there soon. But today we're talking all about Extreme Robots, who has just as much happening over there with the brand new European Championship Tour and the Spinners Championship Tour. We're going to be talking about both of the kickoffs of those tours right here, right now on the Combot Collective, chatting about robots that were very highly ranked in the TCC overall rankings, robots like Zakiel, robots like Tectonic, robots like number 2 ranked Eruption, and even some new names into the field such as Mongrel, such as the return of Saint Ripper, such as Jasper from BattleBots, from Robo Riots, finally competing in an Extreme Robots arena. All that and more. We got 30 fights total over 3 days to talk about. I'm super excited. Stay tuned right here. We're covering more robot fights, seeing who's rising up the ranks here in the world of robot combat right now on TCC.
Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Combot Collective, bringing everything you want to know from the world of robot combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from BattleBots to the live circuit. And we're here once again on the UK live circuit finally to talk about another robot combat breakdown and another video pretty close to our last one. Super happy about that. Hopefully we can keep up with the very busy month we are going to be having this June. Watch out for us in NHRL later this month. And speaking of NHRL, you know, the Combot Collective has been here for our 3rd year of robot combat coverage now, and with plenty of chatter about NHRL, RoboGames, and of course, Battle of Robots most recently behind us. I feel like it's well past due for us this year to go a bit west of Moscow and back into mainland Europe to cover the European heavyweight live scene. And boy, I said at the top of the video, there is a lot happening in the UK and all over the continent this year. Maybe the most events, most prestige, and most action-packed year the region has seen since Robot Wars refolded back in 2018. On one end, we have Robots Live upping their game after a truncated schedule over the last 2 years with MechMania, an application-based robot combat tour series that will be airing on Mech Plus, a robot combat-based streaming service. But more on that in the future. Turns out there's more than one robot combat streaming service to watch out for now, as we're here to focus on the other end of the scene with Extreme Robots, who in turn had their own bevy of announcements to keep up with Robots Live, most notably with Extreme Robots TV and their biggest show, the 2024 European Heavyweight Championship, a November finals event which will be arguably the largest that Extreme Robots has hosted since their name change. The European Heavyweight Championship is a fascinating one. The news and info about it is not fully solid yet. From what we understand, it looks like team play will be thrown out the window for it. Full focus is going to be on the Extreme Robots Championship belts and, of course, the European Championship trophies. There will be 2 brackets, one for the full combat robots, where every single robot who attended an Extreme Robots event this year will be invited, and a Sportsman Championship, the main championship, with the field coming from the best robots at each respective Extreme Robots event, plus the current Extreme Robots Heavyweight Champion at that time standing in as the number 1 seed. It is unknown what the format of the championship will be, given that it will still be a 3-show weekend for Extreme Robots, but it will be the first time in quite some time that such a large tournament is being held for individual supremacy at Extreme Robots. I'm excited to see what teams show up and who steps up their game to qualify for this large-scale November event. And we've seen quite a bit of that already with our first 3 shows in Doncaster, England last April, which is what we're here to talk about today. Extreme Robots debuts and returns were all over the place as 22 robots across 4 teams, plus the Spinners class. We're all here for 30 fights, with the teams themselves much more evened out this year, with all 4 rosters outside of Divinity having just 4 robots in their crew. And let's be real, Divinity probably needs the extra help after the last 2 seasons. Sorry guys, hate to say it. Same 4 teams this year though, Divinity, Wolfpack, Quake, and our 2-time champions Inferno. In the same format too, with a fight card featuring multiple 1v1s, tag battles, and melees, leading into a gladiator melee where the best performing team's captain will get an advantage late into the battle overall to decide who gets the team contest point for that show. The usual cast was pretty much all here outside of a few key omissions, the largest of which likely being Thor, who would leave the Team Shock robots to fend for themselves. But we did also see Troublemaker, the newest member of Team Wolfpack, also absent from this competition. Plenty of the big name spinners were also not in the house. No Sabretooth, no Monsoon, or Ominous, but the action was still big time in Doncaster, with an Extreme Robots and BattleBots veteran both returning to England for this event. So let's not waste any more time and let's jump into this first event. We'll be going over each robot one by one on each respective team, discussing how both the robot and the team overall did during Extreme Robots' first weekend of shows this year. And as always with these events, 3 shows means 3 team contest points are on the line for this week, 1 for each show's overall winner. And of course, there was also the first official 2024 defense of Tectonic's Extreme Robots Heavyweight Championship, one which it won late last year. Stay tuned for that too. We're going to be talking about that. So here we go, guys. 22 robots to jump into. Let's do it. Free agent and Fight Club qualifiers seem to be a thing of the past in 2024. Everyone who wanted to compete at these events got into the main field, and this is specifically good for Team Wolfpack, our first team we're going to be discussing today, and probably the worst performing this week, all things considered, at Doncaster. A lot of these robots, like Leviathan and Alpha, have floundered in the Fight Club melees before in the past. Now it was time for them to put up or shut up with guaranteed positions on the main card this year with such an underdog roster of robots. And one robot that really put up, despite what its 0-7 record might say, is one of those robots I just mentioned, Leviathan. This robot starred 2023 as a recently purchased St. Aggro clone, decided to eventually turn Leviathan into their own creation and designed an immersion-inspired front hinge flipper whose rebuilt version made its debut at this event. The sleek purple wedge certainly looked the part here, but also likely earned its respect amongst its peers by fighting 7 times across the 3 shows. But like I said, it did go 0-7 while taking some bumps and bruises along the way. It looked promising in its first melee of the week, became just short against fellow front hinger Ignition, then lost various multi-robot battles over the week to other machines such as Jasper, Manta, Implosion, among others. It also had a couple of one-on-one battles over the weekend, the first few of its short career. One of these was an out of the arena loss to Tectonic, the quickest battle of the entire weekend, and the other was a valiant judge's decision loss to the one and only Eruption. Trust me, we got more on that powerhouse flipper bot later. But, like I mentioned, not a lot of these robots which spent a lot of time in last year's Fight Club melees could put up or shut up, and that brings us to the other robot I just brought up, Alpha. The Alpha is another front hinge flipper, a big boxy brown fella made by Team Wolfpack captain Shane Lale. And despite its very fitting lone wolf theme, this robot has looked like anything but an Alpha in its first 2 seasons thus far. Last year it had massive weapon and drive reliability all across the second half of the year, and so far from what we've seen in 2024, the only improvement the Alpha has made has been its utterly amazing new paint job, a badass tribute to the legendary Firestorm. You guys know we're a favorite of Firestorm here at TCC. Alpha, though, appeared exclusively in 2-on-2 battles, teaming with both Ironaw and Leviathan, but weighing down both in the process. Its issues from last year immediately returned in its debut fight, leaving it to be knocked out within seconds on show 1, and then on show number 2, it was another knockout loss, albeit much later into the battle this time against Team Divinity. I love the new rise and 250-pound front hinges again in the sport, especially at Extreme Robots, but outside of Ignition, one has really yet to light up the world in this class the way P1 had a couple of years back. And another weapon style that isn't really known to light up the world of robot combat are low-pressure flippers. Robots like Barracuda and Tectonic that are built more on finesse rather than power, and one of the oldest active low-pressure flippers in the game right now, Mega Mouse, was back for yet another Extreme Robot season, but not looking like it had in the past, shockingly. That's right, for the first time in over a decade, Mega Mouse has overhauled its look, seemingly embracing its Wolfpack relations now by going with the new name of Bad Mouse and rocking a new, much more devious paint job with a sinister grin that gives me shades of the original Velociraptor. On top of that, the flipping bill on the front of Bad Mouse has changed as well, offering a bit more purchase at both the front and even the sides of the flipping arm. Did this new look and attitude help the former Extreme Robots champions though? Signs point to no. In fact, this really felt like another run-of-the-mill weekend for the formerly named Mega Mouse, with it mostly losing while still getting its usual massive upset over a much better flipper. Overall, Bad Mouse went a very rough 1-6, with its sole victory coming in its first battle under the new name and look, picking up a shock knockout victory over Ripper number 6 on show 1. Ripper, though, very much got its revenge on Bad Mouse, defeating it 3 times over in the next 3 battles. Seems like a new attitude doesn't always mean new results for Bad Mouse, but it is only show 1. I love the new look. Hopefully we can see the results to go with it. Finally, though, we have the de facto ace of Team Wolfpack and Team Iron Awe, the multi-time FRA UK champion Iron Awe 6, the only Iron Awe in attendance with both Iron Awe 5 and the quite successful Iron Awe 8 sitting this event out. Just like a few other robots on Team Wolfpack, Iron Awe did get a brand new paint job for this event, bringing back the warning stripes on the rear while adding a big number 6 as well. But unlike Alpha and Bad Mouse, the shiny new coats of paint on Iron Awe 6 did end up seeing a little bit of success. Overall, the leader of the Wolfpack finished its week with 2 wins and 2 losses, which may not look impressive to many teams, but certainly stood out compared to Iron Awe 6's Wolfpack brethren. It certainly didn't start off well, though. It got knocked out in a 2-on-2 battle by Implosion and Beast, but things would turn around just a few fights later when Iron Awe 6 stepped into the arena versus Tectonic for our first Extreme Robots title defense of the year. Get out the battle graphic. It was a battle between Power Flipper and Low Pressure Flipper, striking force versus pure finesse in this championship matchup featuring the multi-time champion Tectonic, featuring the challenger Iron Awe 6. And like we've seen many times before in the UK, it was an incredibly tactical, edge-of-your-seat flipper frenzy for almost 3 minutes, with great driving by both Will Thomas and Shane Lale. Flips came few and far between, but Iron Awe 6 made the most of its opportunities, going 3 for 6 on flip attempts, with some mighty yeets coming from the hands of its flipping ram over the duration of the battle, the last of which was enough to take Tectonic out for a late KO, allowing Iron Awe 6 to be crowned our new Extreme Robots Heavyweight Champion, an honor it would successfully retain later in the event with a battle against Ripper 6 on show 3 of the weekend, which ended with a controversial judge's decision. I'll let you watch that fight, be the judge of it yourself. It was probably one of the best fights, if not the best fight of the entire week. Fantastic matchup. Be sure to check it out in the Extreme Robots channel. Iron Awe 6, though, retains the title. And be glad they did, because overall, taking the Extreme Robots Heavyweight title would be the sole highlight for Team Wolfpack, who overall can only put together 3 total wins amongst the 4 robots on their ranks. Lucky for them, 2 of those wins really matter when it comes to bringing home the Extreme Robots Heavyweight title. Now it's going to be up to Iron Awe 6 to run the gauntlet and successfully defend that title for the rest of the year if it wants the number 1 seed in the European Championship. Only a few months to go, Iron Awe, no pressure. But speaking of the former champ Tectonic, we now move on to Quake, who just like Team Wolfpack struggled to put up much in the points department early on in the year, but did put up much better results, as we'll see here in a moment. The Will Thomas and Team Shock-led Team Quake is always a serious threat to the top robots and top team of Team Inferno, mainly because the team is primarily made of Team Shock robots, which have always been a thorn in the side of Team Invade set of robots. Even without Thor at this event, everyone knew that Team Quake would be a threat with their skilled driving and solid reliability, with the wildcard X-Factor of the newest robot on their team, TR4, joined the ranks. Yes, after debuting at Extreme Robots last year with Team Divinity before being traded off to Team Wolfpack, TR4 has now found itself on its 3rd Extreme Robots roster with Team Quake, serving as the only non-shock robot on the roster in this event. The younger brother of the former Robot Wars Grand Finalist had a pretty average debut year at Extreme Robots last year. Plenty of early robot gremlins, which just like with Alpha, would seemingly return for TR4 at this event. It kicked off its week with a solid one-on-one battle against the Axbot Implosion, but driver Alex was, in my opinion, a little too cautious with the weapon during this battle. TR4 would only go for 2 flips all battle, landing 4th, but that was all it could muster over 3 minutes. This led to the much more aggressive Implosion to pick up the victory. Though TR4 would redeem itself later in the night with a double out of the arena victory in a tag battle against Satan Can Opener, but then broke early in its next battle during Show 2 against Ripper in a freak loss, which caused TR4 to be sidelined for the rest of the weekend. Not the most ideal show for TR4, who still looks to find itself in the UK scene, now entering crunch time with only so many shows before the European Championship. Another robot no longer bound to Fight Club melees would be Team Quake's newest robot, Poseidon, the low-pressure flipper formerly known as Ace. And unlike a lot of the robots that were featured in those melees, Poseidon was sneaky good last year, placing number 48 out of over 200 overall on last year's TCC rankings. The solid performance continued here with a very strong 4-win, 2-loss weekend, where it appeared in just about every fight style possible to help its team. It took on robots like Ignition in one-on-one battles, had multiple 2-on-2 battles with various partners like TR4 and Tectonic, won a melee versus robots like Leviathan during Show 3, and even appeared in its first ever Gladiator melee during the end of Show number 2, almost winning the entire show in the process for Team Quake, but it did have to pull out last minute due to damages. And that's probably the biggest hindrance to Poseidon's weekend. In its short sample size, we saw this very reliable robot be its least reliable yet, as not only did its internal problems potentially cost it a team point, but its weapon also cost it early in the weekend during the aforementioned one-on-one against Ignition, something the Thomas family will have to keep an eye on for the soon coming second event. But next we move over to Team Quake's own ace, Team Shock's answer to robots like Iron 6 and a former FRA champion in its own right. We have Manta, and not the RoboGames one, though that would make for an amazing fight. For 11 years, Manta, the flipper, has been a dominant force in the UK sportsman class, but recently has had some up and down years. 2021 and 2022 were mired with technical issues, but 2023 looked to be a bounce-back season for it, with that momentum seemingly continuing into 24 with a par-level 2-2 weekend, though it could have been much worse for it if it wasn't for Bad Mouse. During the first battle of show number 3, it challenged the Wolfpack flipper in one-on-one combat, and halfway through the battle, Manta was completely immobile and upside down. This was an easy win for Bad Mouse, but the flipper would foolishly save it, allowing Manta to send the rodent robot out of the arena in the dying seconds of the battle. Besides that, Manta also won a melee featuring robots like Leviathan and Ignition, but did lose a different melee to Ripper in show number 2, and also appeared in the very final Gladiator battle of the week, but lost to Eruption there to cost Team Quake another potential team point. Solid overall week though for the new look Manta, but there is space for improvements before Guildford in a couple of days. Finally though, to cap off Team Quake, we have one of the biggest workhorses in the entire heavyweight class, a machine which averages about 40 to 50 heavyweight fights every year, Tectonic, the robot which entered the 2024 Extreme Robot season as our heavyweight champion, standing in early as the European Championship's #1 seed. This robot currently stands as one of the biggest rivals to Europe's top dog, Eruption, and is a beacon of reliability, but sometimes it lacks knockout power that can cost it, much like it did versus Iron 6 in its 2024 debut fight, the aforementioned championship defense. So we already addressed this battle on Iron end, but on Tectonic's end, despite some good driving by Will Thomas, the flipper just could not get purchased, forcing the robot to go 1 for 7 on flip attempts during the frustrating loss. It redeemed itself some in show 1 by winning the first half of a Gladiator melee versus the likes of Bad Mouse and Ripper, only to be ousted by its rival Eruption on and out of the arena to the Flame Pit. Show 2 saw even more bad fortune, as after TR4 had its aforementioned drop out from the remainder of the weekend, it left Tectonic alone for a 2v2 it was originally scheduled for, forcing it to fend for itself against both Eruption and Beast at once. Tectonic held its own, getting some serious offense in, but it was outpowered by the end, forcing Tectonic into a third loss. But it did bring it back to 500 before the week was over with an out of the arena victory, a judge's decision win over Ignition, and a 2-on-2 win alongside Poseidon, the latter of 3 being the most interesting to me. We know Extreme Robots wants to introduce tag championships to their events. I think Tectonic and Poseidon will be one hell of a team for that chance. But that wraps up Team Quake's week, so close but so far from acquiring team points on 2 occasions. Instead, despite nearly a 500 record overall, the Thomas family-led crew only left Doncaster missing their Extreme Robots world title. Tough blow. But now we move on to Divinity, a squad which during the 2-season history of Extreme Robots Team Championship has seriously struggled to perform, picking up only a couple of team championship points in total across these 2 years, even with the reinforcement that Team Roaming Robots has provided the crew over the last couple of years. And maybe because of these rough performances, this team was featuring 6 robots on their roster as opposed to the usual 4 the other 3 teams had. But maybe it made up because some of these robots did not fight much at all. Kind of like Can Opener. Out of the 20 plus robots in our field to discuss today, this robot would appear the least out of any sportsman robot with just 1 battle over the weekend. The Annihilator Onslaught, the robot which somehow found itself ranked number 61 on the TCC rankings last year, was only brought out for 1 battle this week. Yes, a 2-on-2 battle where it teamed with Saint to battle TR4 and Poseidon. Not the best combo when you're a horizontal crusher and TCC's lowest ranked robot last year. It was quick, but it wasn't pretty. Can Opener starts its year off 0-1 with a knockout loss. Now as for its teammate Saint, the robot which I just mentioned finished 2-11 of 2-11 on our rankings last year. That 2-on-2 battle against a couple of flippers was the usual tough start for Saint, who returned from a long absence from action last year only to put up a 1-win, 23-loss record. But wouldn't you believe it, in just one event this year, one event, the Saint would tie its win total from 2023 and even manage to end the week at 500 with a second 2-on-2 battle, this time against a very weak Team Wolfpack and their 2 lackluster front hinges, Alpha and Leviathan. Saint dominated this 2-on-2 battle, or I should say Jasper dominated this 2-on-2 battle, putting both Alpha and Leviathan in positions where they could not right themselves, allowing Saint to get just as much credit as Jasper here for the knockout victory. So that brings us to 1 knockout win and 1 knockout loss for the Saint. 0 points. A good start by their standards. But did I say Jasper? Why, yes, I did. One of the closest friends of the Combot Collective and a massive supporter of the TCC overall rankings, Kinetic Energy Robotics finally made the trip from Scotland over for some Extreme Robots action, and they 100% made a true statement and impact as Team Divinity's newest robot. We've seen Jasper compete over the last couple of years exclusively at Robo Riot, the Irish Heavyweight Championship, where it always does good for itself, picking up wins over lower tier robots and making a championship run. But numerous fans have wondered if this robot was the real deal or if the level of competition helped their ranking over the years. Well, the team are determined to find that out themselves this year, as they are planning to skip out on Robo Riot this year to focus fully on Extreme Robots 2024 and even MechMania as well. So glory and gold was much on the mind for the former BattleBots competitor, and despite its 250 record as you see below, it certainly looked the part here at Doncaster. In its Extreme Robots debut fight, it was thrown into the deep end with a multi-robot melee versus the likes of Manta and Ignition, but it looked strong, getting a good amount of offense on Ignition before time went up in a losing effort. Then, in Show 2, it managed to get its first career Extreme Robots win in that previously mentioned 2-on-2 battle alongside the Saint. In my opinion, though, Jasper's most impressive effort would be its final one in the last Gladiator Melee of the week during Show number 3. In this battle, Jasper kicked off things versus a couple of All-Stars in Manta and Eruption, and while being seriously outgunned in terms of weapon power, it made up for itself with great reliability and control, staying in the mix for the entire battle, even managing to knock out Manta before time was up. The judges ended up picking Eruption to move on in this meeting, an incredibly questionable choice in my opinion, given the aggression Jasper had shown off plus the knockout it had gotten over Iron All 6. But I digress. At the very least, Jasper should be in line for an XR title shot after a dispatching of Iron All 6. I would certainly like to see that at least. It would be a really good match. Low pressure versus high pressure once again. So that's 1 for 3 for Jasper after 4 fights, with its lone win an impressive one. But on Team Divinity was another robot which entered the arena 4 times that weekend, but with much less fortunate results. Jasper was an Axbot turned flipper. Well, what about a flipper turned Axbot? Last year at the start of the XR season, a lot of hype and fanfare was directed towards one Ripper number 7, the newest member of the Ripper family and Team Roaming Robots, the one originally intended for BattleBots 2020. And despite the pedigree and TV level look, this robot seriously disappointed in 2023 and ended up not being featured nearly as much as we all thought it would be due to numerous internal and external failures. This left Captain John Findlay with some choices entering 2024, and what he decided to do with this robot was most definitely interesting. In a recent interview on the Reactivate podcast, John stated that with how solid Ripper number 6 has been lately, he wanted to keep that as his main flipper and start branching off into different weapon types once again. And he certainly has done that with the return of ST Ripper, more on that robot later, and with rumors of him rebuilding Ripper as well, his old Crusher bot. The most surprising change, though, would be that Ripper 7 will be ditching the Flipper and be becoming an Axe bot for Team Roaming Robots and Team Divinity instead, going by the name of Axel now. The robot still looks the part, phenomenal design, Axe fits right in, but it hasn't fit inside the arena yet. In its debut fight, a 4-way melee, it would be knocked out immediately by Ignition, and in every fight after the fact, it would look better and better, but discover new problems with itself at every turn. It drove better in Fight 2, but struggled to self-right. It could self-right in Fight 3, but it turned out its Axe couldn't reach opponents at all. And all of this eventually led to an 0-4 week to Axel, one of those losses coming by knockout. Only one, surprisingly. Hopefully Ignition and Thor can show this robot a thing or three down the line. We need more solid Axe bots in the heavyweight class. I'm glad to see that they're thriving in the UK again. But let's stick with the Finlay bots now and move to the ace of Team Roaming Robots. I just discussed it a little bit. Ripper number 6, the face of the UK live scene, a former Extreme Robots heavyweight champion in its own right. Ripper has had a busy offseason, as always, with Extreme Robots, appearing at numerous non-Extreme Robots competitions, demo events, and even STEM education classes over the last few months. But when it comes time to get back into competition, this robot rarely loses a step, especially now it's back to being the premier Ripper in the Ripper Flipper family. Ripper 6 started off its week poorly, losing to the new and improved Mad Mouse by KO, and after losing to the new and improved Bad Mouse by KO after breaking itself on the arena wall. And I talked a little bit about it earlier. Ripper kind of took this personally. It took it to Mad Mouse in its next 3 fights, targeting the rodent in its first Gladiator melee of the year, then defeating it in a melee where it also knocked TR4 out during Show 2, then an hour later defeated it again in another melee where Ignition and Manta fell to Ripper number 6 too. That brought Ripper to its 5th and final match of the week, an Extreme Robots title match where it had a phenomenal back and forth with Ironaw 6, one where Ironaw would take the late win, but a great match nonetheless. I said it once, I'll say it again here, watch that match. Leave it in the comments who y'all thought won. But yes, Ripper 6 did end its week at 2-3, but still a strong start with multiple high-quality fights in my opinion. But last we go to the ace of Team Divinity, another robot that was very much on the struggle bus with its older sibling Saint last year, only finishing just 1 spot higher than it on the TCC rankings. We have here the Robot Wars All-Star, another former FRA UK champion, the Thwack bot Gabriel. It has definitely been a tough time for Gabriel post-Robot Wars, and the challenges continued for it at this event. But credit where it's due, much like Ironaw 6, it managed to win when it mattered most during the weekend. The Titanic Twacker kicked off its week in a one-on-one battle against Eruption, where it lost by knockout in one of the most bizarre ways possible, by somehow, some way, getting stuck on its side, in what I believe is a first for Gabriel. Gabriel suffered the wrath of Team Inferno all weekend, as it also lost to Implosion during Show 2 and Eruption again in Show 3, both of those by a decision. But at the end of Show 2, after a great showing from Team Divinity, the veteran managed to seal the deal against Implosion, who after struggling in the round prior of the Gladiator melee, made it easy pickings for Gabriel, who picked up a rare knockout victory for itself, and picked up a point for Team Divinity, the highlight of Team Divinity's week. And with that, Team Divinity took a step ahead of the Wolfpack and Team Quake, picking up 1 show point off the strong Clipper of Ripper and the courageous arm of Gabriel. The addition of Jasper ended up being a promising one as well, as Team Divinity looks to maybe be a bit more solid than we all gave them credit for. Worth noting though, last time Team Divinity scored an early win in a season of Extreme Robots team play, the team ended up not scoring another point for over a year. So let's hope this is not the start of another long drought. But finally, speaking of drought, we have Team Inferno cooking it up, a team just as dominant as the team which leads their operation, the Oates family's Team Invade. This small but formidable team, highlighted by live event legend Beast and our defending Robot Wars champion Eruption, has taken the first 2 Extreme Robots team championships with little to no competition. The group performed nearly a clean sweep in 2022 and ended up meeting a little bit more adversity in 2023, but ultimately pulled away big time in the end once again. With so much consistency behind the team, it's hard to see them failing, especially with the performance they just put up in Doncaster. Oh my goodness. We start Team Inferno off with the sole robot not from Team Invade on their crew, the aforementioned legendary flipper Beast. Beast, much like Iron Arm, may be the robot it always was, but now doing it with a completely new team after being acquired by John Finley and Team Roaming Robots to be the new heavyweight flipper for his son, Ollie Finley. Definitely some teething issues for it at first. Beast seemed to be a massive liability for Team Inferno last year, but as Ollie and Beast both wore themselves in as the year went on, the robot was a solid B-level force set Extreme Robots once again, and may even become an A-tier force like the rest of its team with the overall performance it put together here. Beast would go 3-0 over the weekend, picking up a win in each show, fighting exclusively in tag team battles. On show number 1, it teamed with the Axbot Implosion for a knockout win over Wolfpack, then joined Eruption for a judge's decision victory, but did nearly cost its team over a couple of instances in that battle. Then, it joined Implosion again to cap off the week at show 3 with a victory over Divinity this time, the last fights for both robots over the weekend. Next, we have arguably the best front hinge flipper at Extreme Robots since its debut in 2018, Ignition. Now captain of Team Invade, Michael Oates is a very busy guy. Not only does he compete at heavyweights, but he's also a high-level featherweight driver as well, and a student too, I believe. So, over the Extreme Robots offseason, it was a lot of featherweight events and work on Eruption and Implosion over those months. But what about Ignition? Well, according to Michael during a stream interview, it was sitting at the XRHQ over the winter, so nothing was done to this robot in terms of improvement. In fact, it pretty much entered this event coming straight from the November 2023 show. So this may explain why they decided to take it fairly easy with this robot, having it fight exclusively in melee battles here. And during this stretch, it would see 5 melees, challenging just about every robot the show had to offer, from Manta, Poseidon, and Tectonic to Jasper, Ripper, and Leviathan. Overall, it would hold its own like always, but shockingly only managed to pick up 1 victory in these 5 melees, its first one of the week, against Leviathan, Axel, and Poseidon in a judge's decision win. But now, from the second newest heavyweight Team Invade has to offer, we go to the newest, shiny new, with the very promising Axbot Implosion. Probably the best Axbot at this event, I would say, with Thor's absence. During last year's debut campaign for Implosion, things did not start pretty, but the Oates family was very determined to make Implosion a competitor, putting Eruption and Ignition aside for most of the year to sharpen Implosion's axe blade, mostly to positive results thus far. It's certainly one of the more winning hammer and axe robots in the world right now, a resume which we backed up following a 3-2 weekend in Doncaster. It had a strong debut battle against TR4, defeating it via judge's decision, then defeated Alpha and Iron 6 by KO in a tag battle where it managed to reach Iron internals on a couple of occasions. In show 2, it appeared in Gladiator Melee where it almost won, but ended up succumbing to Gabriel. Then in show 3, lost a back and forth 1-on-2 against Tectonic, before ending the week on the high notes with another 2-on-2 victory, this time alongside Ignition. Implosion was deep into the negatives on our rankings last year after its first event. At +4, they should feel much better this year. But finally, we saved the biggest for last. We have the granddaddy of them all, the king of Europe, and a robot which, despite its exclusivity to the sportsman class, has managed to rank number 2 overall twice on our TCC rankings over its first 2 years. We're, of course, talking about the former Robot Wars, Extreme Robots, and FRA UK champion, Eruption. The robot with the case for best Brit flipper, if not best flipper in the world, period, once again dominated its way through another Extreme Robots event. As surprise to absolutely nobody, it would go undefeated, taking 5 wins over 5 attempts to propel it high up the TCC rankings very early into the year. It kicked off by shockingly standing Gabriel on its side, then an hour later brought home its first team contest point to Team Inferno by throwing Tectonic out of the arena. In show 2, it made short work out of Leviathan before joining Beast for another beatdown of its rival Tectonic. And then finally in show 3, it defeated Gabriel again before winning another Gladiator Melee, this time in controversial fashion, first against Iron 6 and Jasper, then against Manta to give Team Inferno another point to close out the weekend. So with that second Eruption victory, that brought us to, big shock, a Team Inferno victory to close out the team competition for the week. As Team Inferno claimed 2 points, Team Divinity snuck in 1 point, and the Wolfpack and Team Quake sitting with 0 still, entering Guildford. Sometimes keeping it simple works best. we've seen a lot of teams shifting amongst the other 3 rosters, but Team Inferno has always been Team Invade plus Beast, a winning combo with seemingly no clear weak spot. But what about the spinners, you ask? Well, I mentioned it a little bit already. This year, with the European Spinner Championships also scheduled for November, all of the full combat class robots are now split into their own category, a class where every single robot who appears at one of these events will automatically qualify for November, but only one can be the #1 seed and be the Extreme Robot Spinners Champion come the end of the year, a championship belt that has recently been vacated off of Monsoon, who was absent from this event. The title, a brand new championship belt which spins like the classic 2000s WWE Championship, will be on the line in the very first spinner match of the year, and I bet in a million years you wouldn't guess who won the spinner's title. I'm just fucking with you. It's Zadkiel. The highest ranked British spinner in last year's TCC rankings, dominated once again, kind of like it did in last year's first half of the year, where it had an absolute death grip on the XR Spinners Championship before Monsoon returned. Well, no BattleBots mainstays or Robot Wars veterans in sight for now. Zadkiel was set to dominate this class for the foreseeable future, and that it did off the gate with its first battle, one with the vacant Extreme Robot Spinners title on the line versus the Brit Flipper turned spinner, Mongrel. Mongrel had a split second of promise, tilting Zadkiel on its side for a brief moment, but once the Angel of Mercy's weapon made contact, it's usually curtains for these new and unproven robots, and that's what happened here. An easy knockout in under a minute, a feat it would repeat the following day with a one-head knockout in an even quicker time versus Mongrel, allowing Zadkiel to win and retain the championship with the greatest of ease over day 1. Finally, on day 2, during show 3, Zadkiel would fight Talio instead, but different robot, same story here. Talio squared up only to get sat down after Zadkiel obliterated the top armor of the traditional vert. So watch out, TCC rankings. Zadkiel is on the rise once again. 24 points already for this year, the highest out of any robot on this show. But now let's talk about the second half of that Extreme Robot Spinners Championship match, Mongrel. Like I mentioned, this robot from Team Crazy 88, the crew behind Crazy Croup and Ironheart 88, is built off a refurbished Brit Flippers chassis and honestly looks the part with the unique geometry it featured to go alongside a nasty looking spinner. One issue though with the Brit Flippers is they usually aren't built for spinners to strike, and that was very visible during its aforementioned battles against Zadkiel. Mongrel only had one moment of potential in those 2 very short fights, and during those 2 fights, its spinner worked only like half of the time. Thankfully, that wasn't all Mongrel did. Thankfully, during show 3, it would get a break from Zadkiel while it fought Talio to instead challenge Saint Ripper in its first fight since the pandemic. This fight was not a good one. In fact, it may have been the worst of the week. Mongrel pushed around Stripper while neither robot really worked at all, and eventually Mongrel would win this battle just like Luigi by doing absolutely nothing. Our last 2 robots to discuss today from the Spinners class, just like Can Opener, only appeared in one battle all week, exclusively fighting in show number 3, but still have done enough to qualify for November. Let's hope this isn't the last we see of these 2 though, especially for the worst robot we're discussing here, Talio. Talio competed at last year's final Extreme Robots event under a different alias, but could barely get things going at all during that weekend, and it would debut late at that show too, funnily enough, only appearing during show 3 of that one. But back to 2024, the big time vertical spinner would only have one fight, the one we just mentioned against Zadkiel, and it kind of showed a better performance than Mongrel did in its 2 battles. I mean, its weapon spun, some maneuverability was there, but ultimately Talio was the perfect shape for Zadkiel to rip apart, forcing Talio's time in the arena over the week to be less than 20 seconds. So here's to some improvements and more fights for this one. I really do like that big spinner on it. I want to see more. But finally, after everybody else, we go back to the ones that started it all at XR, Team Roaming Robots, for one more machine, the return of ST Ripper. Last year, Team Roaming Robots made a big impact in the spinners class with Galactus, arguably the best horizontal spinner the event saw all of last year. But after Galactus was seemingly retired late into the year, John Finley had to work on a new spinner, and what he put together was a brand spanking new version of Stripper, one with shades of Aftershock. We last saw Saint Ripper before the pandemic, closer to its debut year of 2018, when it was fighting the likes of Aftershock, Ignition, and 2.0. But this is a new field of robots, and the new stripper will have to challenge beasts like Zakiel and Ominous at some point this year, most likely. And they better get to prepping because its return week did not go well at all. During show number 3, it fought an already 0-2 mongrel, and barely anything worked at all. Its weapon had 0 purchase, and its drive only worked for about 1/3 of the battle, leading to some abrupt stops. This one was over in just half a fight's worth of time, and it was back to the drawing board for St. Ripper. Stripper? ST Ripper? As you can see here, I have no fucking clue what this robot is named, but I am excited to see it back. So there we go, guys. That does it. Overall, Zakiel is back as your XR Spinners champion. Its second reign with the vacancy left by Monsoon, though just like last year, the robot faces little to no competition at all. In the sportsman class, Team Inferno made away with the team championship lead early once again, but not without some pushback by the likes of Team Quake and Team Divinity in what looks to be a more balanced team season. But out of all those sportsman robots, Iron 6 stands above the rest for now as our XR heavyweight champion after defeating Tectonic for the strap, then defending it against Ripper number 6. You have to imagine robots like Eruption and Jasper are going to be in line for that championship after the final Gladiator Melee of the week. And that brings us to our next topic. Speaking of that title, of course, I already said whoever holds that title come November will be the #1 seed for the European Championships. But who were the qualifiers for the European Championships after our first 3 shows? Well, that's a good question. One, we do not know yet as of this recording. Still waiting on confirmation from Extreme Robots. But if you want to take a peek and a guess here, the 3 best records coming out of this event were Eruption at 5-0, Beast at 3-0, and Poseidon at 3-2, the best robot from this class to not be a Team Inferno machine. I would say expect an early invite to Eruption. They're going to be there anyway. You might as well get it out of the way, but only time will tell. Now this video is releasing on the 14th of June, if everything goes right, should be. A day I picked specifically because today is not only 2 days away from Extreme Robots' second stop of the year, but it is also the kickoff day for Extreme Robots' brand new streaming service, ExtremeRobots.tv, a service which I will provide a link for below in the description. Extreme Robots TV is much like Mech Plus, but solely dedicated to the world and competition of Extreme Robots and their umbrella of events. The streaming service is set to feature team documentaries, educational programs, and of course, robot combat. After the last few Extreme Robots events were originally live streamed, the rest of the season is set to be recorded in HD and will be edited to be aired on Extreme Robots TV 2 days after the event. We'll be getting series for the Spinners Championship, the Sportsman/UK Championship, and even the return of Europe's top featherweight event, one we covered last year, Fight Fest. Plenty of exciting stuff on the website, which we'll be covering on the Combot Collective over the year. So if you're looking for more robot combat to quench the thirst of no BattleBots so far, no World Championship 8 news, we have an amazing option right here. Best part about Extreme Robots TV too, and this is not an ad, this is just something nice, it's free. You can sign up for it today, right now, and all you need is an email. Be sure to check it out because we're going to have lots of great robot fights, hopefully some great editing, great interviews, great insight, and great commentary on that. But that's going to wrap it up here for the Combot Collective, talking about Doncaster in London. Video went a little bit longer than I thought it would be. I got to find a way to truncate these XR videos. But there was also a lot of intro, a lot of reintroducing the robots here, so hopefully it won't be as bad next time. Maybe some new robots. I am super excited. We do know about some other new robots, like the return of Aftershock is After Chop at this event. Maybe we'll see Iron 8, Iron 5. Thor's probably going to be back. A lot of stuff to be excited for. But for now, Iron 6, your heavyweight sportsman champion. Zakiel, your spinners champion. Team Inferno with the points lead. We're going to have to see what happens when we go to Extreme Robots TV. I don't know if they're still doing the live streams. I would imagine they aren't. Next time we come to you guys right here at the Combot Collective to talk about Guildford. But yes, thank you all so much. I am your host, Sterling Brown, Sterling TXTG on Instagram. And this office is getting hot. So I'm out of here. Hope you guys like the Great Britain jersey, by the way. Fitting for Extreme Robots Talk. Sorry. You guys have a great one. Be safe. We'll see you next time on the Combot Collective.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.